Hey, Rob from the Master Switch here. One of the most common email queries that we get is, please help me set up a full hi-fi system on a budget for under $300 or $500. And so we're always looking for equipment that doesn't cost a lot and which still provides great sound. So we were quite pleased to receive these, the Fluance Signature Series HiFi. They are the bookshelf speakers in Fluance's Signature Series range, obviously. They cost $200 for the pair, and we've been testing them for the past couple of months here in the office. They do a few things very, very well indeed, extremely well for $200. The first of those is the top end. A lot of speakers that we describe as bright also unfortunately end up being described as fatiguing, meaning that after a couple of hours or 3 hours, you start to really feel a little bit exhausted with the music you listen to. It starts to feel like something's needling your eardrums. A lot of headphones get it, and a lot of budget speakers get it because there's just not a lot of tuning put into the high end, and so they become a little bit tiring to listen to after a few hours. These are very bright speakers that have a ton of detail and emphasis on the high end, but which we could listen to all day. We literally had days where these would go for 7, 8, 9 hours at a time, and at no stage did any of us feel like they were exhausting. We never felt fatigued. That's quite a trick to pull off. And it really helps, like I said, there's a lot of emphasis in the high end, and the detail is really, really good. It feels really crisp and really precise, and we really felt like we were getting the best detail we could out of our music. Unfortunately, I can't quite say the same for the other aspects of the sound. While they do the high-end detail very well, the Signature Series HiFi have a slight deficiency in the low end, and to some extent the mids as well. Now, this is sort of something that you'd expect from speakers in this price range, that they aren't going to go as low or be as impactful in the bass as slightly more expensive speakers, or like a pair of floor standards, for example. These cabinets are big, but they aren't enormous. They have two 5-inch woofers and a couple of bass ports, and although they do put out a little bit of bass, it doesn't feel nearly as impactful as it should. It feels quite undercooked and quite recessed. That's not necessarily a huge problem. You expect at this price range that adding something like a decent subwoofer is going to give your sound a bit more completeness. It's going to make things a little bit more interesting. But even as they are, even taking that into account, I just felt like these weren't doing a ton of work down low. And as I said, this is a problem that extends into the mids a little bit as well. Vocals felt okay. They felt fine. There's nothing particularly wrong with them, but I never felt like I was getting the full picture of what was going on with my music, which was kind of a shame, because I thought that a pair of speakers that did something pretty extraordinary in the high end with such perfect detail that wasn't fatiguing, I feel like they should have been better down low. It's kind of a shame. However, it's not just the high end they do well. I want to talk about Soundstage and Sweet Spot for a sec. Now, Soundstage obviously is the positioning of different elements in a song. The wider the soundstage, the better, because it means you can pick out the individual elements, and the speaker's sweet spot is the part of the room where the sound feels the most natural and the most full, where it feels like you're getting the full picture of what's going on with your sound. Now, obviously, a wider sweet spot and a wider soundstage are better than narrower ones. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. The speakers which have surprised me with the wider soundstage and sort of the sub $1,000 range were the Kef Egg. Yes, that's egg singular, despite the fact there are two of them. I don't know. Those speakers, the sound quality didn't blow my mind, but what really surprised me was how wide the soundstage was. Kef have this thing called the UniQ driver, where the tweeter is actually directly inside the woofer, if I remember correctly, and that really helps spread the sound. Please don't ask me how. The maths completely defeats me, but either way, they have a super wide soundstage. These, it wasn't quite as wide, but I got a very similar impression. I was able to sit wherever I wanted in the room, or more or less wherever I wanted. Certainly wherever I wanted on our listening room couch. I didn't have to sit down a specific spot. I could sit down wherever I wanted, and it really felt like I was getting the best out of these speakers. It didn't feel like I was having to inch a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left to kind of get the sweet spot. It felt nice and wide, and I thought that was a credit to the Signature Series HiFi. I thought they did that exceptionally well. Another reason that I like these speakers is they are actually damn good looking. The cabinets aren't particularly special. They're a little bigger than normal, to be fair, but they are made of ye old standard MDF, medium density fiberboard, the kind of material that just about any set of bookshelf speakers under $500 will be made of. But that doesn't stop them from actually being quite a pleasure to look at, and a pleasure to have in your living room or your bedroom or wherever you happen to put your bookshelf speakers. They look fantastic. Look at this front end. I love the color scheme, the black and the yellow color scheme with the yellow woofer and the black surrounds. You know, my deputy editor Alyssa, she saw them and she compared them to a pair of KRK Rockets, which are a pair of stereo monitor speakers. I saw them and I thought Klipsch, that same sort of the black and gold color scheme that Klipsch has, that's very similar to what this is, the black and yellow. I think it works really, really well. More importantly, these feel very human. Yes, they were probably designed by machine, built by machine, and yada yada, but it doesn't feel like a committee designed these. It feels like an actual speaker designer, you know, took these and tried to make them as human and as interesting as possible, even to the extent, and I'll show you in a cutaway, there's a cute little Canadian flag around the back. Fluance is Canadian, so there's this little fabric Canadian flag. It's just touches like that that are quite charming and that you don't expect to see on what are essentially a pair of cheap speakers. $200 is cheap for speakers. So yes, on balance, really like these. Are they the best speakers I've ever heard? God, no. No. Are they the best speakers I've ever heard for under $200? I'd say they're in contention. I think if you're on a budget and you want a pair of speakers that will become a great pair of everyday speakers, and you're prepared to pair them with a subwoofer, which I think is kind of essential for these, I think these should absolutely be your top pick. I think they do a few things really, really well. They certainly have some deficiencies, like I mentioned, in the bass and the mid-range. But honestly, I would be very happy to keep these around. We have to send back our review gear here at the Master Switch, and I have to send these back. And I'm going to be quite sad to see them go because I think that they are a lot of fun. If you are in the market for a pair of bookshelf speakers for a hi-fi system and you don't want to spend a lot of money but you want to get a lot back in return, Fluance Signature Series HiFi. It must be said, however, that Signature Series HiFi is one boring-ass name. You know what the previous line was called? The Fluance Reference Series. Come on, guys. Come on, guys, you gotta get original. Even Kef, have you beaten on that? The Kef egg. I mean, it might be strange, but at least it's a decent name. Still, Fluance Signature Series HiFi. They are currently on our list of the best bookshelf speakers of this year. We put together a massive list with a ton of buying advice as well. I'll put a link in the description. You can see where these landed up. I think we've got 17 or 18 ranked bookshelf speakers on there. They didn't make it to #1. If you want to find out who made it to #1, click the link in the description below, as well as the link in the description below for the full review of these, where I go into a lot more detail about what makes these tick. If you want to help support us, keep us ad-free, keep us pop-up free, go to themasterswitch.com. The link is down below in the description. Click on any product link, it'll take you to Amazon and buy something. We'll get a tiny referral fee, and those tiny referral fees help keep us alive. What else? Oh yes, subscribe. Definitely don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.